Good morning, one and all. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, serving our community as Senior Minister. And whether you're joining us from Ann Arbor itself, elsewhere in the state of Michigan, or even the United States, or even our broader world, we are delighted that you've chosen to spend some time in spiritual reflection and renewal with us. Welcome to our community. We are a progressive, liberal, spiritual, ethically oriented community that has been meeting continuously in the city of Ann Arbor since 1865. In fact, this very week marks the 156th founding anniversary of our community. So 156 years together through two pandemics now, and world wars, and so many needs and evolutions of our nation and our society. It is a pleasure to be in the midst of that continuity, honoring all that this community has held in terms of a vision for our U.S. society, for our state of Michigan, and for Ann Arbor. This particular Sunday also marks Mother's Day. So if you are among us who are honoring that, either as identifying as a mother or grandmother, or somebody who has embodied mothering qualities, the qualities of nurturance, compassion, love, caring, mentoring in the lives of others, we honor you today and hold you in our hearts. We recognize as well that there are those among us who may have painful or complex histories with the concept of mothering, or folks who have been mothers in our lives. And so we also hold you in our embrace for those things that could perhaps have been different, or that longing in that heart for a different sense of nurturance and mothering. Community is a place where we strive to move into love and healing together, and may this space on this particular Sunday, honored in our broader culture in a particular way, be that for you, however you're arriving here. In the many things that this weekend and this Sunday mark, it is also our community, our Unitarian Universalist community's Flower Communion Sunday, our particular homegrown experience of a tradition that we founded and created. You'll be learning more about that as our time together unfolds, if you're not familiar with it. I want to say a word about us being on Zoom together today. Those who are regulars in our community, you know that many of our services in this pandemic time have been pre-recorded. We are live with you today using one of the technologies that is not the most frequent one we have used, Zoom, for our Sunday services. As such, I would fully expect that there may be little hiccups or little things that go awry when you are live and navigating technology that we are learning together. Thank you in advance for lending us your grace and graciousness as we learn together. I'm delighted to share, and I'll say more about this as well as our service continues to unfold. We have a very special guest, someone who's dear to me, dear in my heart. Margaret J. Wheatley, Meg Wheatley, is with us today. If you're not familiar with Meg Wheatley, I will be sharing more with you shortly. But just to note for now, we have a special, very special guest with us in our service this morning. As we now move into a time of finding that centering, finding the grounding in each of our hearts that allows us to move into a space of reflection and renewal. I'm just so pleased and grateful. Kristin, LeSueur will be one of our Chalice singers, will be helping us, supporting us, guiding us with an opening song.
Good morning, everyone. Please join me in singing number 361 in the Gray Hymnal. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is QuianaDenae Perkins, and I serve this community as the coordinator of Congregational Life. Today, I get to start us off with the words of Alicia Forde, when we pause to remember. When we pause to remember who we are, companions on this grand experiment called life. When we take a moment to shed the ways we have been carefully taught, to lead from fear, to punish the poor, to persecute those who do not look like we do, to deny rights to those who love, to believe that we are separate, that some people are superior to others. When we take a moment to shed all of that and hear our stories, hear each other into existence, into community, when we take a moment to embrace, to practice a different way of being, when we answer the call of love, then we are living into our promise of building the world we dream about. It is a beautiful dream to cast a vision, to stretch our mind into the future and imagine maybe if we were to build a new way of being, not someday, but beginning again today, beginning again every day that we have breath, taking courage with hands and heart to make real the dream of a more equitable world, to journey together, seeking to be transformed even as we transform, becoming explorers and learners in this world around us, humbled by what we do not yet know, fulfilling the promise of healing a fragmented world, laboring not just in hope, but also in love. In this spirit we commit, in this spirit we gather, and in this spirit we pray. I invite you all to join me now in the reciting of the UUAA Chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. And we light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Now let us share in the words of our covenant. The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth and love, and to help one another. In addition to sharing all of these beautiful offerings with you, I also get the tremendous opportunity to welcome you into the all ages part of our worship. Today, we will be hearing a story as told by Theresa rohlck with the art of Deborah Golden, who is a beloved community member. We invite you into the story to listen with your whole heart.
Today, we are celebrating Flower Communion. I'd like to tell you a story about how it began. The story is illustrated by Deborah Jean Golden. About 100 years ago, in Prague, Czechoslovakia, Unitarian minister Norbert Čapek was trying to think of a way to strengthen the connections between the people in his church. You see, some people in his church believed in God, and others didn't. So he wanted to build a more inclusive community. He was searching for a ritual that would work and would be meaningful no matter what someone's religious background was. Chapek was inspired by the natural beauty all around him, and he decided to do a ritual that involved flowers. He asked each person to bring a flower to church to share. And at the end of the service, each person took a different flower home. Chapek thought the colors and the variety of different shapes and sizes of the flowers reflected the diversity of all human beings. And when the flowers were all gathered into one big bouquet, it represented how all the people could be united in community. Now, Dr. Chapek's wife was also an ordained Unitarian minister, the Reverend Maya Chapek. She was traveling in the United States in 1940, and she introduced the flower ceremony to a Unitarian church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And ever since that time, many Unitarian Universalist congregations hold some kind of flower communion at the end of the church year, just like we're doing now, and just like Norbert Chapek did in 1923 in Prague. The end.
Our flower communion tradition reminds us not just of the bounty of the earth, but of our deep connection to it, our abiding love of it and for it. What we sometimes, particularly on this Mother Day, we can take a breath to notice we sometimes refer to all of that creation, all of that beauty, that earth that we're a part of as Mother Nature or Mother Earth. It's in that spirit this morning that I crafted an original piece of writing, a small poem that's a little bit in the Hindu spirit and tradition. There's a long tradition in Hinduism of writing and speaking directly with. It's not only Hindu, it's in many traditions, but that's the one I grew up in, of speaking to that which is we consider greater than us, being in kind of an intimate, direct, conversational relationship with it. And in that sense of having a deep, abiding love of, for, appreciation of Mother Earth, the bounty of the planet that we're on, I want to share these words with you. There are two words that are related to Hindi or Sanskrit that you'll hear in this. One is the word Maata, which means mother, related to Mother Earth, our planet. The other is Maya, which is Sanskrit, and a concept that exists in both Hinduism and Buddhism. It's a term that means illusion. This piece is entitled Maata, Mother of Us All. In a world in which we can sometimes feel like orphans, in a time that can leave us filled with anxiety and uncertainty, your gentle spirit persistently abides, always close by, keeping watch like the mindful mother that you are. The earth beneath me, your body, your solidity, holding me, grounding me. The fresh grass, the blossoming flowers, caterpillars, soon to be butterflies, reminders of the beauty that you give life to, of the cycles and rhythms of nature of which we are a part. For centuries, we have tried to control you, own you, building fences, drawing boundaries, issuing deeds excavating resources, forgetting that we ourselves have come from you, are still connected, intertwined with you. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, we say at the end, remembering when confronted with finitude that we are one with you. We, your children, at times grasping and afraid, have made a bit of a mess of things. And when we're in trouble as we are, when we're anxious as we have been, we turn to you in all your guises, the trees, the flowers, the mountains, the rivers, the oceans, the forests, the deserts, the valleys, the plateaus. We turn to you in all your manifestations to find ourselves and remember who we are. To remember that our sense of separation, our smallness, is an illusion, is Maya. And that in your vast, generous, creative being, we are eternal. I want to invite you to hold that in a moment of shared reflective silence, meditation, whatever frame or lens works for you. Let's take just a minute or two to hold some inner stillness together. Would you join me in that, please? May the bounty and the beauty of our Mother Earth continue to hold and guide, nurture each of us deeply and well. As we continue together in our time this Sunday, I have distinct honor, pleasure, and privilege to introduce Margaret J. Wheatley, Meg Wheatley, to our community. Some of you I know already know Meg and her work and follow it closely. For others of us, you may be hearing of Meg for the first time. I would like to share a few words of introduction. There is so much I could say. I could tell you that Meg is an internationally renowned poet, author that has published more books than I could count, that Meg has been an international consultant of service to our nation and our broader world, that she's been, on a very personal level, a spiritual friend to me, a guide, a teacher. Practicing in the Shambhala Buddhist tradition, Meg has helped me step more deeply into spiritual practices, ways of being that have certainly deepened my own sense of presence and spirituality in the world. Gifts that I share with you, that I share with our community, directly connected to a beautiful guest who's with us today. If you aren't familiar with Meg's work, particularly some of the recent work, I'm going to take a moment of privilege to mention two of Meg's most recent works, which I have particularly found very meaningful, and would invite you, following today's service, to consider exploring further, because there's much wisdom and beauty in these works. Meg's most recent book, publication, Who Do We Choose to Be? This is what it looks like. Facing Reality, Claiming Leadership, Restoring Sanity. This book is a gorgeous and beautiful primer about the times we are finding ourselves in as a species, as a human species, and much of the tumult, societally, culturally, globally, that is being encountered by us, the things that we're needing to navigate. Meg speaks directly to these, the times we're in this book, offering the question of, in the midst of all of that, in the midst of these societal forces that we're navigating, how do we want to show up? What's the difference we want to make with our lives, with our existence, with our being? Such a beautiful, thoughtful book. I also want to share with you Meg's most recent gift to the world, co-produced with beautiful jazz musician Jerry Granelli, who is also a Dharma practitioner and teacher, entitled The Songline. I cannot say enough words. If you are not familiar with The Songline, this is an auditory, spiritual, mystical, mythic journey inside ourselves, but using the landscape of sound and story to take us on a journey into our own spiritual ground of being. And again, returning to that question of, who do we choose to be in a world that has so many needs, that is in the midst of such shift and transition? How do we want to show up? Who do we want to be? I would say run and go find The Songline after this service if you have not heard of it or encountered it yet. It is just such a gorgeous offering. With all of that, it is my genuine delight this Sunday to introduce you to a spiritual mentor and a beloved dear friend to me, Meg Wheatley.
Well, thank you, dear Manish. And I'm just feeling joyful at the opportunity to be together and experience your whole service. And I want to share first my spiritual background, which I realized is a personification, at least as I understand UUA. I have gone through so many different ways to express my faith and my relationship to the divine. So I started out, I'm born of a Jewish mother, that makes me Jewish, and the most powerful role model in my life was my grandmother, Irma Lindheim, who was one of those Edwardian women who was a feminist, the first in many ways, and worked tirelessly for the creation of the state of Israel in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. But my father was English, and most English people are pagans at heart. It's that deep Celtic sensitivity to life and nature, and I certainly inherited that from him. Then I went on to, I loved the high church rituals of the Episcopalian Anglican Church. Then I migrated to the very quiet, more contemplative form of Christianity. Then I took on mystic Christian mystics who I still revere. And then I married a Mormon and have raised a large Mormon family. I was just told last night that my 24th grandson is on the way. And then I became a devout Buddhist, where I really found the sensitivity and the philosophy of how to live life, how to be a good life. And now I am with an Indian yogi, a great mystic. So I think that gives me some credentials with you all. And I'm actually going to speak from all of those traditions. And I brought a flower for later. It's a beautiful sunflower, right? But the power of the sunflower that I will speak about is that they plant sunflowers in Chernobyl, in Fukushima, after these great radioactive disasters, because the sunflower takes in the radioisotopes. And it thinks it's just nutrients. So it thinks it's just getting what it needs to flower, but it decontaminates the soil. And I think for me, this is personally a perfect expression of how we can absorb the trials, troubles, and tribulations. And through using those as nutrients, we can then blossom and offer our service and our gifts to others. So on this Mother's Day, I also want to make reference to Gaia, as Manish's beautiful poem just did. We are always held by Gaia. And Gaia is also the generative principle. And let's think of mothering and how we can offer our compassion, our care, so that more life may generate. That for me is also known as the divine feminine, but let's call it the divine mothering principle. And without that generativity, that creativity, that caring for other people, no life is possible, right? So we are all mothers, or can be mothers, as we offer our caring and our compassion, as we're just noticing the suffering of others. I read last night the clarity of the principles with the UUAA, and I just loved your commitment, your covenant. Perfect. So what I also want to speak about, now I'm going to bring in from my Jewish tradition, the Song of Solomon. What time is it? Well, a beautiful passage. For lo, the winter has gone. The rains are over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of the singing of birds has come. The voice of the turtle is heard in the land. Well, before I remembered that the turtle that is cited in that beautiful scripture is actually the turtle dove, I, of course, went on Google with the question, so what sound do turtles make? Well, the only sound they make is crawling. But the turtle dove, as we all know, has such a beautiful, constant, rhythmic calling that sounds very, very beautiful to us. So this is spring. This is spring in our hearts. This is spring in our energy. This is spring in the possibilities that are all around us. But spring is part of the cycle of life. And the cycle of life includes what will come next, the flowering, the abundance of summer, the harvesting in the autumn, and then again, winter will return. So this is the spring after the winter of COVID, which was a very terrible experience, a very hard experience for all of us. One way I could interpret that is that the mother, Gaia, there's a wonderful principle in ecological thinking that says nature always bats last. No matter, as Manish referenced in his poem, we've tried to dominate and control nature, life, take charge, play God with the planet, and it's coming back to haunt us in terrible ways because nature always bats last. Nature always has the last word, and her laws are her laws, and she doesn't much care if we violate them. There are consequences. And certainly with COVID, multiple consequences that I don't want to go into. What I really want to stress at this point is what has grown in us during COVID and what has grown in us in terms of our awareness of how we are. So all of us have been in some stage of lockdown. Michigan certainly just recently experienced it again. India is terrible, terrorizing what's happening there for people. But what have you learned about yourself? Now, I could say, what have we learned about the world? But I don't want to go there right now. What have you learned about yourself? So you would have noticed in this time of really being constrained and locked down and maybe locked in to what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about what triggers you, what bothers you, what upsets you? What have you learned about old triggers, but also about new triggers? What drives you crazy now? What you've just had enough of it. So what are your frustrations? To really be thinking about those. What have you learned about relationships? I mean, this was enforced intimacy and enforced aloneness. What have you learned about your needs for relationship? What have you learned about your ability to contribute to others, to serve others beyond your own neediness during this time? What have you learned about your family, those you love? What have you seen in them? And then how have you reacted to it? Those are stories we don't have to share right now, but we have a lot of stories about what we've learned about each other. And more importantly, for my purposes here, what have we learned about ourselves? So this has been an opportunity to get to know ourselves, to see ourselves very clearly. And then what do we do with that? So I want to read a quote from Joko Beck, who is just one of the extraordinary, now quite elder Zen teachers. She's very clear about this. She says, human life should be like a vow dedicated to uncovering the meaning of life. The meaning of life is, in fact, not complicated, yet it is veiled from us by the way we see our difficulties. It takes the most patient practice to begin to see through that, to begin to see through all of our difficulties, and to discover that the sharp rocks are truly jewels. So the sharp rocks of COVID, another way of thinking about this, I've had several spiritual teachers who say that all of our difficulties are the manure, the fertilizer for our growth, for our awakening, for our blossoming. So COVID has provided a great deal of manure. But what Joko Beck and other spiritual traditions emphasize is that how we react to our difficulties, how we relate to them, because we're not reacting, we're relating, we're contemplating. What did I learn about myself? What do I now see that I didn't see because I was just, in the world, in my life, going crazy with busyness. And we've had this period of reflection. What have I learned that is positive, that breeds that has possibilities in it? So there's a distinction here that feels very important to name. And it's very clear throughout Buddhist and Hindu teachings. Life has pain and struggle in it. There's no denying that. I mean, yes, bad things happen. We fall ill. We have COVID. We lose a loved one suddenly or after a long illness. We experience the pain of our children not doing well or succumbing to things that will ultimately harm them or destroy them. Life is filled with painful experiences. Let's not deny that. But the distinction is how we relate to those. Are those difficulties jewels? Are they possibilities for learning? And so the distinction that is made in Buddhism is there is pain, but the suffering is what we create by how we interpret, how we react to that pain. So suffering for us it's important to notice that we have control of this. We choose how we are going to respond to a painful moment. Now, you've all had this experience. So it's Mother's Day. I want to talk about the pain that children are going through and also that they create for us, or that you have experienced from your own mother. How do you interpret that? Do you feel victimized by it? Do you feel put upon? Do you feel marginalized? Do you withdraw? Or do you take that moment and discern, carefully discern? Let me speak about a child who's in trouble. Carefully discern, how can I serve this one? How can I help? I can't fix. We know that. But how can I help this one who is in so much pain? So I feel so strongly that our role is to alleviate suffering. The pains will be there, but the suffering is something that we personally have choice about, because and only because we are conscious, we are aware, we draw from a different level of faith, a different sense of what's going on in this world, and a different sense of how we want to serve. So there's so much talk about privilege, and that is an important conversation. But I want to say the ultimate privilege for us, and it's above all the distinctions that we have to be sensitive to now. It's above economics, it's above gender, it's above race, it's above nationalities and ethnicities. It's the greatest privilege we have is that we know about consciousness. We know that through paying attention, we can transcend our reactivity and become responsive. We can see more of what is needed from this person, from this situation, from this world. For me, that's a privilege that cannot go to waste. It absolutely cannot go to waste. In Buddhism, we speak about this life as a precious human life because we have, as the only species that truly has this level of consciousness. So as we come out of COVID, or at least we're in the spring, there may be another winter ahead. What I'd really like to stress is for you all to pay attention to what seedlings have come out of the manure of COVID. Some of those seedlings are worth noticing because you don't want to keep acting in that negative way. Some of the seedlings are definitely worth nourishing because you have learned about yourself. You've learned what triggers you, and that's the first step to getting past those triggers. Once we notice where we behave in ways we don't like about ourselves, well, that's the first chance and a beautiful opportunity to start to both notice it and then not react in the same way going forward. But we have to notice all these seedlings, beautiful ones. Maybe you've learned about the power of communication. Maybe you've learned about the power of being present. I find Zoom, where I do all of my work in teachings now, actually allows for a level of direct connection between you and me that isn't available if you're sitting in a pew somewhere or you're sitting in a hall somewhere and you're so aware of what other people are experiencing. So which of those seedlings are you committed to nourishing? You want to grow in those strengths. So maybe you've become a better listener. Maybe you've become a more patient person. Maybe you've realized that all these difficulties, this enforced intimacy, which can just drive us crazy. Maybe you've learned something about true intimacy. And who do you choose to be in your relationships with your family, with your neighbors, with your friends, with strangers? Who do you choose to be? And you can nurture those seedlings because the world really needs us to show up differently. And how do we nurture the positive things that we've seen in ourselves? How do we nurture our strengths so that we're no longer reacting just in a habitual way to whatever gets us annoyed or whatever gets us angry? And really, how do we nurture our relationship with these very strong emotions that have become so everyday common, but still very depressing? How do we nurture our relationship to grief, to loss, to sadness? How do we nurture those things as well? We've all had these experiences, and now in the spring, it is time for the singing of birds to be heard again in our own interior landscape. And the earth is supporting us at this moment. So I just want to say two things in closing, that the way to nurture the seedlings that we are now paying attention to, using our greatest privilege of consciousness, the way to nurture those seedlings is through our faith and discipline practice. They go together. Discipline practice gives us the capacity to keep going, even when things are feeling terrible, even when we are back in the terrors of the past year or the present day terrors. Having a disciplined practice, whether it's our meditation, our contemplation, but cultivating our awareness so that we can be present for others. There's no other way to establish that than through disciplined practice, which means you do it. If you've been doing meditation and then you find yourself not doing it, go back and do it. There's no such thing as a good or bad meditation. I've been taught this over and over. The only thing that makes a meditation good is that you've done it. The same with contemplation. How are you nourishing your mind, your heart mind? It's not just the mind, it's the heart mind. How are you nourishing that with which practices? Meditation, finding peace, gardening, walking the dog. Those are not equivalents, by the way. There's no substitute for meditation in my own experience and watching it in hundreds of people now. But where do you nourish your heart mind? Where do you nourish your awareness? And the other aspect of this is you have faith. You're here. You have faith. You have principles in the UUA. You have your covenant, what I would call a vow. Rely on those things because those are actually the pathway to no fear. And I'll just end with this beautiful quote that I was given by nuns who were the leaders of nuns while they were 4 women in charge of 1,200 other leaders of religious congregations within the Catholic sisterhood. And they were really besieged by the Vatican. Really, the Vatican was trying to take over and silence the women. I wrote about that in detail and Who Do We Choose to Be? And one point in the Vatican, they were being basically abused, attacked, oppressed, held down by the words of this very, very evil cardinal who just wanted them gone. It was like an Inquisition experience. And at the end of their meeting with him, he came over and he looked at them and kind of leered over and he said, "You are not afraid, are you?" I can't get enough, evil in my voice there. I probably could, but then I'd scare myself. "You are not afraid, are you?" And one of the sisters answered quite quickly, "We are faithful, therefore we are not afraid." And that's become my practice. Whenever I feel fear, whenever I feel overwhelmed, I ask myself, am I being faithful? And I find that in that contemplation, my fear dissolves because I know I'm being faithful. So I offer this to you on this beautiful day when we have time together with so much blessing. Thank you very much.
Meg, such a beautiful message of continuity with the time we have been in, which has churned up so much in each of us and societally, globally, inviting us to hold on to the precious gems, the jewels of learning and growth and wisdom that have emerged, even as we are enjoying the reminders from our beautiful planet, our Mother Earth, that cycles and seasons are inherent in the movement, the experiencing of life. We are now in this period of blossoming and rebirth and growth. Thank you for sharing your reflections with our community today. And for our members and friends, those of you who are engaged in our community in a regular or ongoing way, maybe visiting us for the first time today, if you feel so moved to support the good work, the ministries of this community, the ongoing work of building and supporting transformation and justice in the wider world, we invite you to give as generously as you may be able to in support of all of that. We are a community that is self-funded, self-built, and your generosity directly supports all that we are able to do. You may do so by going to www.uuaa.org/giving.
If every woman in the world, if every man in the world, if every leader in the world, if every nation set a true course for freedom, there would be no more war.
If every woman in the world had her mind set on freedom, if every woman sweet dream of peace, if every woman of every nation, young and old, each generation, held her hands out in the name of love, there would
Friends, I am delighted to be the person who gets to bring you into Flower Communion at UUAA 2021. Before I proceed, I want to share some lessons that I've learned from this season of COVID. It's very quick, 5 quick points for us. 1, weather impacts your growing cycle or season, or COVID hit us all differently. Everyone has experienced COVID in 2 places, one as an individual and one as a community member. All of your experiences are valid and real, and I honor your growing cycle and our collective growing season. Lesson 2, some petals will fall, or COVID has left us with a lot of feelings regarding change, loss, and grief. Some of my grief is communal, the lives we have lost, and some is personal, as I'm still holding on to some of my mentors, Elandria and Dr. Hope. Some sadness has started to shift and some is raw. This is the part of the cycle of love, and I accept it even when I don't like it. The 3rd lesson from COVID, garden life is my jam, or COVID has taught me a lot more about the personal versus communal. I am a communal person. I need people, but in this time of shelter in place, I found myself neglecting my own needs in service of the communal. I realized I need me too. I'm continuing to find the delicate balance of growing myself and contributing to the growth of the community, because the truth is we need each other to survive. Lesson 4, be big and beautiful, or the season of COVID cannot have my joy. The last year has been challenge-filled, but it's also been laced with love and light, and I am here for both. I'm here for when the petals fall, but I'm also here for when the flowers open to their fullest, letting the sun in, letting the bees feast. We get to take in the sun and have moments of abundance. This too is required of us. And my 5th lesson is one that I'm learning as we speak. Everyone gets to move at their own pace or reemerge in ways that match for you. Nothing blooms all year. We have our own time and season to shine. As noted in my first lesson learned, we have all experienced COVID differently. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that we are all going to come out of this season at different times. Crocuses bloom first in February, April, sometimes even in the snow, while apple blossoms arrive late in the summer. I'm not mad at either the crocuses or the apple blossoms for moving in accordance to their needs. To transfer that to us as a communal people, I refuse to shame folks who are emerging in ways and times that match their own growth cycle. It will be a while before I take off a mask, but I can't be angry at somebody else who's more comfortable with that now. Thank you for letting me share my 5 lessons with you. As we gather for this year's virtual flower communion, we asked you to bring flowers. I'm gonna grab mine over here. I got these at Kroger this morning and trust I was not the only person in line looking at beautiful flowers. We asked you to bring flowers because we wanted to see where you yourself have bloomed, where your family or pod has grown over the last years. We are asking for a couple of things in terms of technical help to take our picture. The first is we're asking that you switch from speaker view to gallery view. That will let us see all of your Brady Bunch boxes. However, we know that some people don't want to be in the picture for whatever reason, and that's valid. If you do not want to be in this year's flower communion photo, please turn off your camera. To turn off your camera, you can go to the left bottom of your screen and there is a small camera with a caret and it'll direct you to turn it off or on. It's next to the microphone that is making you mute right now. In addition to having the flower in the photo, we'd like you to have your flower in the photo and have it on gallery view. Oh, and the second technical thing is if you don't want to be in the photo, to turn your screen off to opt out of it. The way that you'll know that we're taking the picture is that we're going to play a little bit of the Glen Thomas song that you just heard from the offering again. As long as that music is on, you should be in gallery view and holding your flower. When the music's off, you'll know that we have stopped taking the pictures and you can return to whatever state on Zoom that feels most comfortable for you. I want to thank you again for being a part of my season of growth, part of my family of trust, and a part of my pod. Carrie, when you're ready.
If every woman in the world, if every man in the world, if every leader in the world, if every nation set a true course for freedom, there would be no more war.
If every woman in the world had her mind set on freedom, if every woman in the world dreamed a sweet dream of peace, if every woman of every nation, young and old, each generation, held their hands out in the name of love, there would be no more. If every man in the world had his mind set on freedom, if every brother stood with brother as a witness for peace, every man, every nation, young and old, each generation, held his hands out in the name of love, there would be no more. Sing with me. If every leader in the world shared a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no more.
Thank you, friends, for participating in our photo. You'll see that somewhere in the UUAA world in the coming days.
As we close our time together today, I offer our community's collective thanks once again to Meg Wheatley for being with us on such a special day as you're also celebrating, Meg, this beautiful news of new life that'll be emerging in your extended family. Congratulations from all of us. What joyous news that we got to be present to. If you'd like to learn more about Meg's work in the world, her upcoming programs, offerings, any and all of that, after the service, you can go to www.margaretwheatley.com. There's a lot of information there about Meg, including this beautiful offering that I mentioned, the Songline, well worth checking out. Following the conclusion of our Zoom service today, our community members, visitors, friends are invited to participate in some small group time to both get acquainted and catch up with one another, share thoughts. You can do so by going to what's called our social time via www.uuaa.org/social hour. It's in the chat box now, that link that you might need. If you would, as we close our time, go in peace on this beautiful day, in the midst of a season of blossoming, in a time on a day culturally in which we honor those energies, those embodiments of nurturing, care, love, compassion, all of those beautiful qualities and energies. Go forth in peace, knowing that you are held in the loving embrace of this community until we meet again. May it be so.
All right, everyone, join me in singing hymn 1021 in your teal hymnal. You'll probably already know the words. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you don't let show. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Gonna need somebody to lean on.